All right, hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back to Caribbean HRD TV. Today we have our second episode in our Fireside Chat series. You may remember that we introduced this with our talk with Professor Guy Standing from the University of London School of Oriental and African Studies in August last year. And this afternoon, we welcome Dr. Lois Parkes to our forum, and she will be speaking about adaptive leadership and our current Caribbean context. All right, Dr. Parkes is currently the Leadership Development and Institutional Strengthening Specialist with the Caribbean Center for Development Administration, CARICAD. And although it is headquartered in Barbados, it is an arm of CARICOM. Dr. Parkes has served in that role since August 2019. And prior to that, she was engaged as the Regional Project Manager for the very successful Caribbean Leadership Project for 3 years. She served for over 20 years in the public service in Jamaica in varying capacities, including Chief Personnel Officer, where she had overall responsibility for providing leadership to the Office of the Services Commission to ensure the provision of quality policy advice to the public service, the Jamaica Constabulary Force, the local authorities, and the Judiciary in terms of appointments, training, discipline, and retirement of their employees. Lois Parkes is a graduate of the University of the West Indies. She earned her MSc in HRD with distinction. Yes, and she's also a graduate of the first cohort of the Caribbean Leadership Project. In 2007, she was awarded the Commonwealth Scholarship that was tenable in New Zealand. And there she completed her doctoral studies in Human Resource Management and Industrial Relations at the Victoria University of Wellington. She's also a published author and a published researcher and an executive coach. So welcome to HRD TV, Lois. And I think this is your second time here because you have a talk, yes, about how we're going to fund HR, and I invite everybody to watch that. But today we're talking about leadership. And so I'm very, very happy to have you with us. The first thing I want to ask you though is, what is adaptive leadership?
All right, Olivine, thank you so much. Are you hearing me?
Yes, I'm hearing you now.
Okay, great. Sorry about that. So I am very passionate about leadership. John Maxwell has said that everything rises and falls on leadership. And so adaptive leadership in particular, it's really about a practical leadership framework, right? That is about helping individual leaders and organizations to adapt, but not only adapt, but to thrive in, we love to talk about the VUCA world.
Yes.
Yeah, dealing with how do you adapt and thrive in very, very challenging, complex, dynamic environments, right? Yes. And it is about being able, both at the individual as well as at the organizational level, collectively, yes, to take on change, to take on the meaningful process of change. And it is about how do you diagnose the essential from the expendable and bringing about that real challenge to the status quo. Mm-hmm. Because the truth of the matter is, when I first heard about adaptive leadership, it would almost seem as if it is something that you can choose to take on. I don't have to go get into all of this highfalutin thing, we adapted to this and that. But guess what? This pandemic has ensured that everybody, if we are going to survive at all, we are going to have to adapt to these challenging, complex environments that we have found ourselves in.
So the time... One little thing though, is it different from situational leadership, the type of one of those leadership models that we heard of from I was in undergrad, surely?
Oh yes, and look, there are a plethora of leadership theories that are out there. True. And the truth of the matter is, leadership theories build on each other.
True.
I would say so I would think that this adaptive leadership would have had its roots and foundation in situational leadership, yeah? Definitely. And so the difference, I think, is that when situational leadership, that theory came up, we still were living in an environment that was fairly stable in terms of socioeconomic conditions, right? So adaptive leadership is like situational leadership on steroids. And because you are dealing with a far greater level of complexity and challenge. So that's how I see it.
Yes, certainly most of us have not seen the type of world that we've had in our lifetime. Of course, in some parts of the world, things have been quite disturbing, but we have not enjoyed that kind of chaos here. But the thing though, I don't know, and we need it in the Caribbean. But you see, it seems to me that we're a little late on the curve. We've been hearing about VUCA for 10 years now.
Yeah.
Why are we just hearing about that now in the Caribbean? And why is it that we are just feeling the need to begin to prepare our leaders to meet that kind of world when the rest of the world has been there for certainly over 10 years?
Look, that's a serious question. Because you're right. We are not strangers to the VUCA world in the Caribbean. Let us look at a historical context.
Yes.
From the time of the first peoples who were here, the Taínos, and they saw the first set of Europeans come into their space, and what happened. And we have gone through slavery, colonialism. We have, coming out of that period, we became these societies that were very sugar agricultural focused, dependent. We didn't really have our economies diversified, and we were dependent on that, and we're dependent on, protected markets in Europe. Then we had a VUCA moment where those protections were removed. To quote Mia Mottley, the current Prime Minister of Barbados, there's a speech she did recently, and one of the things that she said in that is that what we essentially did in the Caribbean was swap from being focused on one type of industry that we're dependent on, sugar.
One kind of service, tourism.
One kind of service, tourism. And so here we are going through another disruption. Yet again, where we recognize that depending on this one industry in the main for economic survival will not cut it. It will not cut it. And in fact, the Caribbean Leadership Project that I was part of, it was birthed out of that recognition that the leadership that we had in the past, say 20, 30, 40 years ago, is not the leadership that's going to take us to the future.
Next 20, 40 years,
It's not. And so the late Sir Dwight Venom, may the Lord rest his soul, he was the former governor of the Eastern Caribbean Central Bank. So this project was his brainchild. And Sir Dwight, at the height of his career, went on a leadership program. And he found it so meaningful personally. And you say, well, hold on a little bit. If I, who felt I was, at one point I thought I had arrived. But here it is. I am learning so much about leadership. What about the next generation of leaders? And I'm very much working in the public sector space in the Caribbean. Let me tell you something, Olivine. We are due to see a good 60 to 70% of our current top leaders in our public services across the Caribbean, they're about to leave or will leave very shortly. Due to just normal retirement.
The kind of age.
Not no VUCA, nothing. Not enough people, just normal leaving. Are we preparing the next generation of leaders? And they can't be prepared the way we used to prepare the people in the past. You just can't. Right? So we have got to understand that it is upon us. We have done relatively well for all of our challenges. The Caribbean has done relatively well. We are classified, albeit there are issues about that classification, but we are high income, middle income countries. We're not considered the poorest of the poor. We have not done badly in terms of our development, given all our circumstances, but we cannot sit on our laurels. So even before the pandemic, we are so impacted, so vulnerable as it relates to climate change and natural disasters, not just hurricanes, tsunamis, earthquakes, all of them, right? We have an issue with low socioeconomic growth. We have an issue with lower than expected levels of educational attainment. We have issues with crime and non-communicable diseases. And the list goes on. And guess what? On top of all of that, yes, we have low educational levels in terms of our attainment, but of the people who are educated, we are the highest level of migrants.
Yes, yes, right? Yes.
So we are not benefiting. Well, you know, we talk about, yes, the remittances and so on, and yes, those are good, but do we have the people in our countries, in our organizations, with the skills and the competencies
exactly,
here leading the charge?
But I'm also thinking, do we even when our people are educated, are they educated in the areas in which we need? For instance, I remember I used to go and talk to people about coming to UA, and I would be representing social sciences, and we have a plenary session. Everybody would be talking, tell you what each faculty has, and then they want to go in depth. And when I get up, the whole room gets up and comes with me to the social sciences talk. And I used to tell them, no, but we need people to be doing science and technology. So if you have a math brain, go over to science and tech. The region needs scientists. We have enough psychologists. I know my department, we have enough lawyers, we have enough of that. We need people who are going to do manufacturing, things we can export, you know? So that sort of thing. And we also need some sort of strategic plan. So for example, we are graduating a lot of doctors now, but do we still have the doctors that we need? How many cardiologists, or is everybody going to be an O&G person, you know? So we need to start thinking like that, you know, some sort of strategy.
Yeah, and in addition to that, we also need the people who have already, like myself, who have already gone through the system. We also need to be continuously learning.
True, yes.
You know, I saw this infographic just yesterday on Facebook. And so there are two pictures, right? One 10 years ago, one today. And so you see a man with his camera sitting in a helicopter. So he's taking an aerial picture. Today, what do you see? A drone.
A drone, yes.
And the caption says something like this: in 10 years' time, the drone has replaced both the camera person and the pilot.
True.
You better upscale.
True.
You better upscale. So, I mean, this is HRD TV, right? So let me use a specific HR example. So clearly, although we've been having flexi work for some time, the pandemic has put it front and center. And we have found ourselves wanting, not just in the Caribbean, but certainly in the Caribbean, do we have the frameworks, the systems, the work processes, the infrastructure to support people working remotely? We don't, in the main. And just in the area of employee relations, if we are going to have sustained use of work from home, remote work, then we're going to have people who can renegotiate employment contracts. And, you know, for instance, benefits, because a lot of our benefits assume people are working at the office. So you have travel allowances, lunch allowances, you know, how you're treated over time. All of those things are predicated on people working in, you know, going to work at the office. No, do you know how to do that kind of negotiation? Completely rethink and reimagine employee benefits. That's what we need.
But I think we need more than that, though. We need more.
No, that's just one aspect. One aspect I'm talking about. We need much more than that, but just one element I'm pulling out. And talking about the fact that, no, yes, you may have been in employment relations, you've been well trained, but you have to wheel and come again. You have to upskill to create the value for your organization that is required now, because that's what's going to be required going forward. You know, but you're about to tell me about some other areas. Tell me.
No. I was actually thinking, Carvel McCleary. We both know him.
Yes.
His work on organizational trust. trust between, or I'm seeing so much of that now. Your organization does not actually trust you to put in a day's work from your home. And the truth is, there are people, and I will number myself among them, who are actually putting in more time. They're putting in more time from home because, yes, you know, and the organization doesn't trust that. There is still something from our history when we had to be watched by overseers, and we have to be watched by managers now. And that is not going to carry us further in the 21st century. That kind of thinking and that kind of organizational life.
You know, there's a body of work, and I must admit, temporarily, I've forgotten the name of the persons who created this concept. But they call it ROWE.
Okay.
Results only work environment. And Mark, it was a concept that was developed before the pandemic, but clearly has taken on new meaning.
Yes.
You know, the increase in flexi work and work from home. And so this challenge is there for us now. How do we now create environments where we are actually focused on what really is meaningful? We move away from what I heard somebody call snoop provision.
Yes,
you know,
yes,
understanding that actually what we need from people are results.
Yes.
And are you getting the results? And how do you create the environment to empower people so that they can produce the results that we need?
Yeah, I found it. Well, that row, I was just checking that out.
Yes.
Yeah, well, I'll get that. Mindtools.com is something we're gonna recommend to the students.
Yes.
Yeah, all right, great, thanks, because I hadn't heard of that myself. But then I always tell people I'm actually not an HR person. All right, so I had other questions for you, you know, this has been...
It's a fireside chat.
Yes. Well, you know, I actually wanted a couple of other people to join us because I was saying, you know, we have these formulae, the Fireside Chat in the Caribbean. If our governments could hear what half of us were sitting on our verandas and talking about, the problems of the Caribbean would be solved. We all solve the Caribbean's problems from our veranda.
I'm telling you.
This is a veranda. We need a veranda chat, you know?
Oh, yes.
So, all right, so you've just told us that you can see the current situations, the realities in the Caribbean that need adaptive leadership. So how are we going to move toward that from the sort of haphazard things that we've been doing? We want to strengthen our individuals. We want to change the people and strengthen our organizations. And then move toward the society, the economy, and the rest of it. But how are we going to do that?
You know, and that's a deep question. It's almost like asking, how can you eat an elephant?
Yes, one bite at a time.
One bite at a time.
Yes.
And let me tell you something. We have to first of all accept that we don't have a choice. Yeah. There's a Jamaican proverb. So my first degree was literature, by the way. And so I can remember studying Jamaican folktale and proverb. That was literally a course.
Okay.
But which you might think was useless, but actually find it useful because it brings in that
it's actually wisdom, you know, but it's succinct bites of wisdom. That's what you know. Yeah.
Oh yes.
I did it at A-level, so I know.
So when I think of adaptive leadership, this proverb comes to mind. When trouble take you, fitness should fit you.
Yes.
Right? And so we don't have a choice. I recognize first and foremost that we do not have a choice.
Yeah.
Right? We are either going to change or we are going to die. That's where we're at. That's just the truth. And that's the first thing I think we have to embrace, that this is the reality. Okay. For people who are finding themselves in leadership positions in this context, it is as if you have to accept that you're running on two tracks. What do I mean by that? You have to lead and manage. In a lot of my leadership programs, I talk about the distinction between leadership and management. And it's not that one is bad or one is good by any stretch of the imagination. Management is about ensuring that what exists is running efficiently and effectively. But it is concerned with making current systems work as best as they can. And we need that. But leadership is about bringing into existence that which doesn't yet exist. Okay? And so an adaptive leader in a time like this, you're going to have to manage. There's things that have to be done immediately to respond to the crisis. So you can't neglect that. But also you can't be so bound up in the day-to-day that we're not also leading. Meaning that you have got to look to the future. You know, you have got to look to say, okay, what are the trends going forward? An adaptive leader is always looking at what is coming up, what's around the corner. You have to be able to project into the future and to lead your team into doing the same, right? Yes, I know there's such a demand for this time, is, you know, so much demand, but you have to make that space to be able to think about how can things be done better. You have to make that space to ask yourself, what are likely to be the challenges or the trends that are going to be impacting us, the trends that we can capitalize on in the future, you know? So it's a willingness to project into the future and to engage your team into that discussion. And the part of that discussion is you're all going to understand what is core to your operations, but also what are the obstacles to the future path that we need to take.
Yes.
And also it's a willingness to break down barriers and to try the new. And guess what happened now? You know, part of what we teach, I teach is innovation, particularly in the public sector context. And guess what? I am finding now, what we used to teach in terms of approach to innovation, it don't quite work right here. So now in this pandemic, because typically you innovate by, you know, creating like a small test and you try it out, you see, you learn, then you adjust, and then you roll it out a little more, a little broader, and then until you can fully roll it out, because you don't really want to be just, you know, going full 100 into trying out something new, and you might end up wasting a lot of.
We don't have the resources. We actually can't afford failure, and that is a problem, you know, because
that is a problem.
Failure, but we can't afford it. We just don't have the resources to waste, which is why we go with the safe, and it's not. That's not what we need. No, we need bold.
Safe isn't going to help us. Yeah. And so, right now, because we have to be adjusting so rapidly, you are going to have to balance between taking calculated risks, because you can't afford to just stay business as usual, because the situation demands that you have to change. So you have to take calculated risks, and you have to take risks not knowing or not having full information. So I look at, you know, government response to COVID, and in all the countries, not just our country here in Jamaica, all around the world. And a lot of leaders are taking a lot of licks, lots of licks, you know. Should the cabinet get the vaccine first? Yeah. And there's some saying, no, what about other groups? And some say, yes, they're the leaders, they must go first. What do? You are going to have to take calculated risks and make decisions and be willing to say, we are learning as we are going. And once we have new information, we have the capacity to adjust to the new information and keep it moving.
We need to be embedding agility into our organization.
Agility. You know? Agility. And being comfortable with agility.
Yes.
Because if you're not comfortable with agility, you know what's going to happen? You are going to freeze. Yeah. You are going to be responding to every little naysayer. No, don't get me wrong. Stakeholders are important. You have got to listen to them. They are important. They have good and useful feedback and ideas. That is separate from just, you know, you're blown by every little wind, and therefore you are indecisive. And you just
means you had no plan, actually. That is what that would suggest, that you actually had a plan.
So you have to go plan, move, act quickly. Agile is the word.
Just take hello to Sandra, and welcome to Sandra Morris, one of our alumni.
Hi, Sandra.
Hi, thank you.
We're just having a chat here about adaptive leadership. I was telling Lois, you know, we will solve the region's problems on our veranda. So this is touted as a fireside chat, but it's a veranda chat.
Yeah.
Okay. Sorry, Sandra. Pardon?
No, I realized I was interrupting you.
No, I said I'll just listen on to try and catch up.
Okay.
Okay. So the other 2 points I want to make is this. To create an environment, organizational environment where we are embracing and promoting adaptive leadership, it means that the environment itself has to be enabling.
Yeah.
And there are different factors that go into creating an enabling environment. And we have actually we have a whole body of research, Caribbean-based research, that talks about enabling environment for leadership in the Caribbean public service. So you can, if you want to take a look at that research, you can go to clptoolkit.org. clptoolkit.org. So the enabling environment has 4 facets to it. One is that leadership ultimately is about the individual leader, right? And the values that the individual leader has, their motives, their upbringing, and how much they bring of themselves and their willingness to bring their full selves to the leadership process. And that then translates into behaviors.
Yes.
So, how you manage performance, how you give and receive feedback, how you lead, your visioning process, all of those are leadership behaviors, right? And are we actually encouraging the right leadership behaviors in our organizations?
Yes.
And then, of course, we have to have the systems. People need tools to work with, right? You need the right processes, policies, infrastructure. You do need those things. And then, of course, last but certainly not least, is culture. The relationships that people have with each other, stakeholders have amongst themselves, organizations have within and with each other, because we're often working in multiple sectoral environments. What is the culture? And what you'll find a lot of times is that we have a lot of weaknesses on the system side.
Yeah.
And so leaders then have to develop that motivation, those values and they also have to leverage the relationships and connections that they have in order to create the right systems and to promote the right behaviors, not just for themselves, but for the leaders under their own leadership. And so this is how we actually structure our leadership program. It's designed based on these 4 levers. To recognize you can't have one without the other, but we need all of these factors to be built into how we develop leaders, so that we're not only developing leaders individually, but it's also about systemic leadership as well. And so going back to the whole business about self, at the end of the day, we can only lead ourselves, Ultimately, it all boils down to how does Olivine Thomas choose to show up as a leader? How do I, Lois Parkes, choose to show up as a leader? And so you have to develop that, what I said, that bounce back ability. It's really about to be an adaptive leader, you have to be resilient.
Yeah.
Right? You have to understand that crisis will come.
Yeah.
Okay? So we've never had a crisis like a pandemic before, but hey, you never had a crisis before? Crisis is a part of life. Yeah. We're always so taken by surprise. Oh, woe is me, there is crisis. Yeah. People are fighting against me. The culture is not supportive. This, that, and the other. That's life. Yeah. And that's normal. Yeah. When we accept that as normal, M. Scott Peck, In the Road Less Traveled, the first line of that book is, life is difficult. And he goes on to say, it is once we embrace the fact that life is difficult that we actually develop the capacity to transcend life's difficulties. And so it is so important that as leaders, we focus on our own levels of emotional intelligence, focus on self-care in all of this, and managing ourselves, understanding our emotional triggers, and knowing how we're going to deal with them. Today, it was a bit of a sad day because 2 of my HR colleagues told me that they had staff members who died from COVID.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And so I was looking at this issue of how do you as an HR manager or leader, because all leaders manage people, how do you lead people to deal with grief when you are grieving yourself? And it is that ability to also know when you need to take a break, when you need to bawl, and when you need help.
Yeah, but it's actually more than grief now, fear.
Oh yes.
Because let's face it, I mean, how many of us are as certain of our jobs today as we were a year ago?
Not
You know
me.
what I mean? And we're not even talking about the development of the drone. The fact is that organizations are shutting down because
They're literally shutting down.
so,
They
so
literally
you
are.
know, we are which one of us knows for sure that we have a job in 5 months' time, 6 months' time? So yeah, so fear is another very potent one.
It's another thing. And so, and I'm quoting another Mia Mottley speech, and she made a speech to the Caribbean, really. And she talked about the need to pivot.
Yes.
And I started to think even of myself, Loy, can you pivot? Do you know how to pivot?
Yeah.
Do you have the courage to pivot?
I was thinking courage earlier.
Yeah, because it takes courage.
Yeah.
To say, you know what? Do I have a plan B if the current employment isn't going to be here 5 months'
Plan
time?
C, plan D, plan E, and plan
To
F.
Z.
Yes.
Right? And it takes courage and it takes resilience.
Yes.
Yeah, it does. Because nobody says, as you say, plan A might not work out. Plan B might not work out. C might not work out. Do you have the bounce back ability?
Yeah, as you said, we have to leverage all that we've learned, all the knowledge, skills, attitudes, and abilities. And well, I keep saying to people, some years ago, maybe it was about 4 or 5 years ago, we introduced a course called Small Business Development and Growth in the
Yes.
program. The idea there was to have students create their own work. So you ladies are always welcome to come back because it came after your time. But the idea is that we want students to not rely, and we want people to be entrepreneurs as well, So if you're employed for somebody, do something for your employer and bring in new business to them. But by the same token, be able to do it for yourself.
Yeah.
Let's face it, we are the elite in the Caribbean. People who have master's and doctoral degrees are certainly at the top of the educational level. They need to be doing more. The fact is, we're not feeling the weight of those people in the society. We're not feeling as much as we should.
Not as much as we should.
There are gaps. Those people, as you said earlier, are actually looking to leave. A lot of them are looking to walk away with the training that they've received. So, we have some issues to sort out there.
Yeah, you do.
But I don't know. Well, it's interesting what you've been saying. And I don't know, Sandra, you caught up yet? Sandra is muted.
I'm listening in, and it's really interesting.
So, all right, you want to give a quick recap for Sandra's benefit and for everybody else's benefit. And then what I actually want you to do is tell me how is it possible at all, and how is it possible for anybody who is listening now to get in on some of the training that you've been talking about?
Okay, fine. So, so Sandra and future listeners, so we have been talking about adaptive leadership, and we talked about adaptive leadership being our practical leadership framework that's going to help individuals and organizations to adapt and to thrive in challenging environments, and if we have ever been in a challenging environment, it is our environment today in the Caribbean. But we have always been accustomed to challenges ever since our societies began, from the days of the Tainos until now. And certainly the pandemic has layered, really, it's created an additional layer to our previous challenges of things like low socioeconomic development, or vulnerability to climate impacts, etc., etc., etc. And so we've been talking about how do we practically adapt adaptive leadership? How do we take it on? And so I've been talking about the fact that we don't have a choice. When trouble catch you, pitting the shot will fit you. And this is where we're at. We have no choice but to adapt. And so we have to be operating on multiple tracks. We have to look at how do we keep things going. So we have to manage and adapt, the current operation. But we also have to lead. We have to think about the future. Adaptive leaders project into the future, and they invite their teams to do the same. So they're looking at trends that they can capitalize on. They're looking at trends that they can create. They're looking at new markets, new opportunities. And they are also willing to break down barriers and willing to try things out and to take calculated risks. And it's also about understanding that we create leaders by having the kind of enabling environment that focuses on development of leaders at the individual level, looking at appropriate and leadership behaviors, creating the right systems to support leadership, and the right organizational cultures and relationships.
Can I just interject there, Loy?
Yes.
When you talk about the enabling environment, Clement Branch, again, somebody that we all here know, he talks about the fact that one of the problems that we have is that we are trapped in a lane. So, for example, when you look at it, our policies, we've received them. We have tools. We have certain equipment. We have everything, but everything is leading us down a path.
Yes.
And when we try to develop based on the infrastructure that we have, it leads us further down that path rather than taking us onto a new path. And we talked earlier about the fact that we really don't have a lot of resources. So we are more or less trapped in that sort of incremental growth thing, even though what we really need is boldness. But the fact is, how are you going to tell an organization to completely retool? How are you going to tell them to, can you imagine if somebody were to say, invest heavily and bring robotics to Jamaica? What happens to all those people? So yes, a few people play with drones, but can you imagine if we were to inject that full scale into industry, what would happen? So we do need revolutionary change, but the price of that would be so uncomfortable that you have to ask yourself if it would be worth it. Now, I am also a leadership person, so I like revolution, but the fact is that some people are going to die. Figuratively, hopefully, in reality, but figuratively, and our education system, I think, also needs revamping, because it is not, I don't think it is fit for purpose for this world now. I don't know that our education.
No, our education system is not fit for purpose, and that needs a revolution for sure.
Yes.
I have been working in the era of public sector transformation for many years, and I've seen the ups and the downs of it. The truth of the matter is, I can certainly speak from the perspective of the Caribbean, is that we have seen changes.
Okay.
And dramatic changes.
Okay.
Right? And so that tells that change is possible. Now, I have found, and I think a lot of the change in management and change leadership literature would bear me out. But the time change is not revolutionary, it's evolutionary.
Yes.
It's just reality. Change never happens at the pace you want.
True.
But change is possible if you stick to it.
Yes.
So let me give an example. Passport Immigration and Citizenship Agency in Jamaica.
Mm-hmm.
Now think back way back when. Did you ever think way back when, 20 years ago, you could get your passport in a day?
No.
That is now possible. That has become our new normal. So that tells me it is possible.
Yes, I remember the changes out at the RGD. Remember those as well?
Oh, yes. Gosh, even longer to get a birth certificate.
Yes.
No, it's a simple one too. Yeah. Getting a copy of a title.
Yeah.
Online book, there you go.
Yeah.
Right? So let us look at our bright spots, right?
True.
There's another concept we use in our leadership training called Appreciative Inquiry.
Yes,
and
yes.
It's about looking at those things that are working, not that they're perfect, but what can we learn from those things that have worked that we can inform ourselves to address the problems that are still with us, right? Our problems are solvable.
Yes.
I really believe so.
Yeah, no. Yeah.
I really believe so.
It's time to migrate if we feel that they're not, you know?
Yeah,
They're
but
not going anywhere.
they are solvable.
Yeah.
They are solvable. And if anything, what this pandemic has showed is that a lot of countries that you are convinced that there are these wonderful systems, etc.
Yes.
Now the gaps are glaring.
Yes.
You know. So we are not the worst. Let me tell you something.
Far from it.
Far from it. And what we're seeing happening now, let me tell you something, migration is not quite going to be the answer. Eh?
I know. No, because there's nowhere to run. Everybody's in the same boat.
Everybody's in the same boat, you know. So I am a regionalist. I am an unapologetic regionalist.
Well, I'm a nationalist, so I'm even smaller focus.
You know, I love my country. I've lived elsewhere. I am back here working, but I work with the region as well. And let me tell you something, if we could ever really get our regional integration right.
Yes, yeah, man.
Look here.
No, that, yeah.
We would be a force to reckon with.
I know.
Do you know that the most effective regional institution is in this Caribbean region? It's the OECS, the Organization of Eastern Caribbean States. The EU copied the OECS model.
Okay.
All right? It's something we don't celebrate.
But that is it. But that is it too.
Very successful model.
That is it. We don't celebrate our successes. That really is the problem. But Gail Jean-Baptiste from the OECS and I were talking this morning, and we were actually talking about that. We'll be having another veranda chat with her next week. Of course, you guys are invited. But no, we're having that next week. But we are going to be talking about these issues as well. Again, VUCA, you know. But it's like everybody knows that now. Where were we 10 years ago?
And here's another thing too. We love to think, well, if we don't have resources. Well, I studied in New Zealand, and there's a New Zealander who I never met because he was long dead, Sir Ernest Rutherford, right?
Yes.
And a Nobel Prize winner from New Zealand. And at the time when he lived, New Zealand economy was going through a serious crisis. And he said this quote, that I've taken it up as a mantra. We have no money, therefore we must think.
Yes, we need
to say it again. We have no money, therefore we must think.
I love that.
I do not believe that sometimes having lots of financial resources is a constraint.
Yes.
You will waste it.
Yes.
But like I said, when trouble catch you, so we are in a crisis, but guess what? We have constraints. It is an opportunity for dynamic solutions.
Yeah, it is an opportunity. And that is part of the pivot. The way we think has to change.
Look here. When I was with the Caribbean Leadership Project, I came in at the second half of this project, right? And the project was doing very well, training all these people in leadership. But success of this project was really going to be, can you create a sustainable leadership development program for the region? And that means you have to figure out a way to make it work without funding, international development partner money. The partner there was the government of Canada, right? Global Affairs Canada. And so one of the ways in which we had to do, make it sustainable was to go virtual. Now, let me tell you something. At first, nobody thought leadership, and the kind of leadership development we did is very experiential, etc. How can you recreate that in a virtual environment? But I knew it had to be recreated because that's how we were going to make it more accessible, but also make it cost effective. Well, I had to, sell it, but also create the product that would work. We now have it. No, it's the new normal. In fact, if we had not done that, we'd have had no program. We would have been, I personally would have been jobless. You had asked, where can people find out about our programs? CARICAD.net is our website.
CARICAD.net.
CARICAD.net. And so you can go there to see about the various services that CARICAD offers, including our leadership development programs. Basically, what this organization does, and it's 41 years old this year, it's an arm of CARICOM, and it supports member states, of which there are 17, including Jamaica, in the area of public sector reform and transformation. And so it does that through a range of technical assistance programs. So to give an example, we are currently doing a project with the government of Dominica to, completely reorganize their public service. We're also doing a project in collaboration with UNDESA, it's an arm of the United Nations, equipping a number of our public sector leaders in the area of transformation, ICT, in the area of innovation and digital government, public service delivery, right? So we're doing a lot of really, really interesting work. And so do visit us at CARICAD.net. So you'll see about the programs that we offer for free. There are lots of things that are free, or webinars. We have a course called Introduction to Leadership that is going to be a totally free course. And of course, there are the paid programs. And let me tell you something, you check out what leadership programs cost around the world, or is it the cheapest? But cheap don't mean that it is poor quality. It is par excellence, let me tell you. And we have a number of alumni who can testify to that, to the impact of the program. It is really
I've been to some of the webinars myself, so I can testify as well.
Yes, they are in keeping with global standards, but fit for our context.
Yes. Well, thank you so very, very much. I'm so grateful to you. You have any questions, Sandra?
No, I'm just thinking that I need to get on board with those webinars.
Yes, yes.
Okay, so
I need to get on board.
Yeah, there's one that we're currently advertising right now. So do check our website. It's called Mental Wellness, Managing Through the Crisis.
Okay.
Because clearly we are recognizing that, the psychosocial impact of the pandemic is something we cannot underestimate. And so we have a wonderful guest with us, Dr. Veronica Evelyn, who will be talking about how do we manage through the crisis? Because the truth of the matter is we're not going to get rid of the crisis, but we have to manage through it. As such, it's going to be a very practical, how can you identify your stressors, how you deal with them, what are the things you probably need to avoid to help you to manage through the crisis. So folks, just go to our website, CARICAD.net, and you'll see how you can register for that.
Right, and we've had 2, maybe 3 of those types of talks on on Caribbean HRD TV. We were HRD TV all along. We've just put in the Caribbean to try to brand it, But yeah, we have talked like that. But the truth is that hearing it, reinforcing it in your mind will help to, will cause you to do it. And we can carry those lessons into the next crisis. The crisis doesn't have to be a disease. It doesn't have to be a virus. But I mean, how do you lift yourself through a divorce, through a death, through other things will happen. So, learn the lessons and carry the lessons forward. So yeah, thank you so much. I really genuinely appreciate this. So,
it was my absolute pleasure.
It's fun. I love chatting with you all the time. You and I know we can sit and chat for hours.
We can go hours.
And it was quite inspiring for me as well, the little that I caught. Well, it seemed like more than a little.
Well, Sandra will be one. Sandra reminded me of her email the other day and said she wants to be invited to our things. And the first thing I invite her to see, she turned up. So we're
fantastic.
And I'm telling you, I'm going to tell you two ladies, we will be speaking with Gail Jean-Baptiste next week, Tuesday. So I'm inviting you there. We just have another chat, a veranda chat. An exchange of ideas, Caribbean people wanting to be heard, and people who have influence, because I'm at the University of the West Indies, you are there, she was at the OECS. So these are people who have an ear to other people who can effect change. So that is how we have to have it done. That's how we have to have it done. I always say to people that the mosquito is one of the most powerful animals on this earth. A mosquito can clear a room of 100 people. One mosquito can do that if you really take time to it. So I always like to think that we would take on the mosquito as our mantra. We can make change. We can make
indeed.
So thank you so much, Lois. Thank you. Thank you for coming and talking.
Thank you. You're most welcome. Anytime.
All right. Walk good, ladies. Walk good.
All right.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you.